Okay, so first of all, um, what I thought of doing was actually, if we all had masking fluid, was drawing the strawberry first, and then putting the masking fluid on. But I think it would be good to revisit how to draw a strawberry. Obviously, if you're a returner and you know what you're doing, just crack on, put a big strawberry on your page, and get the ball rolling. But what I'm going to do is just show a few little tips as to how to draw strawberries for everyone. Okay, so is everybody ready with their watercolour paper? So what I've done here, I'm going to just demonstrate. Now, tell me if you can't see it, okay? Jackie in particular, you tell me if you can't see it. I'm just going to pin my own video because that helps me see it a lot better. So, and I am recording just for the record, just in case I get shouted at. Okay, so in order to draw a strawberry, they're quite an awkward sort of shape to draw, even though they look quite simple. So what I suggest that we do is we break it down into shapes, you know, like with circles and triangles and various things like that. So if I just draw a circle, and not the best circle in the world, I've got to say, and then a triangle. Okay, so that gives me that conical shape. So if I just seal that off at the bottom, and then I just draw a heavier line in at the top. My lines are going to be a lot heavier than yours, obviously, because I need you to see it. So this is the sort of strawberry shape, and let's say that there is where the stem goes. Okay, so that's us looking at the strawberry, and we're looking at it sort of from not necessarily quite above, but we're looking at it from a higher angle, obviously. So as the strawberry, you know, if you imagine strawberries in a bowl, then we've got another circle here, and then our triangle's a little bit smaller. So if we have the stem on the top there, then we can go in and we can foreshorten that strawberry. Okay, so obviously if we've got the strawberry, if we've got the stem at the top here, then we've got the strawberry in all its glory. So it will be slightly bigger. This will be more elongated. I mean, obviously they come in different shapes and sizes, strawberries, don't they? So, and so on and so forth. So that's how I would approach drawing the strawberry. So obviously this is these are quite small strawberries, but we will be doing a few strawberries like this, just to get that watercolor thing flowing, just to get that sort of getting that strawberry mood, obviously. So another thing I would like to do with this is I would like to draw another strawberry, the same as that one above. And I want to look at the contours. Now this is really useful if you are, you know, for the shading, for the light and various things like that, and to make sure that you've got everything where it needs to be, because obviously this is just a two-dimensional image, so to make it 3D, so we need to bring out some contours, because obviously we have that ridge there. This is quite a handy exercise to do. So you get that image where the contours obviously converge down below. So I'd like you just to do a few of those. You can do it now, obviously, or, you know, I'll give you some time to be able to do that. So then we've got the, I don't know what you call it, the leaf thingy, the sort of leaf crowny thing on the top. So in order to do that, so if I just draw a 5 sort of pointed, looks like an orange actually, and then we take just the all normal leaves out of there, not with any embellishment or anything like that. Okay, so it could look like that, but strawberry leaves as well have different shaped leaves. So it's quite a nice little exercise really to sort of get you back into drawing. I quite liked it. So to make it a little bit more realistic, some of the leaves can be misshapen as such, because obviously not everything is in nature symmetrical. Okay, so then we have that a little bit more elaborate. Now, what you will find with leaves is that they will fold, and you'll see the underside once they're in perspective, and this gives them the more three-dimensional image. Now, if you wanted to do this, if you wanted to, I'll just draw it up, and what you can do if you struggle sort of imagining what this could look like, you can take a piece of paper, cut out a leaf, and then just twist and turn it. Okay, so I'll just demonstrate this now. So in order, for example, if we have that, so there is a degree of foreshortening here. So this is when you put the leaf into perspective. So can you see that, how that sort of starts to change things? So what I'm doing here is, if I just do a couple of sort of singular leaves. So this will be the underside as such, so that will always be slightly darker. But like I said, if you wanted to use a piece of paper to have a look to see how that works. And does that make sense? Okay, so what I would suggest you did would be to fill your paper with some of these, and then what we'll do then, we'll just practice on here with some paint, and then we'll go on and we'll draw some sort of hypothetical strawberries in this context. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, so just mixing some paint. So what I've done for my strawberry is I've mixed, I don't know if you can see that yet, I've mixed some, I haven't got your set, you see, so I've mixed some crimson with some cadmium red. So that's your sort of pinky red with your reddy red, okay? And that gives quite a nice strawberry tone.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'm just going to mute you all again.
Yes.
Okay, so just a little bit of practice. What we're going to do is we're going to have a nice weak wash to begin with when we do this. So we'll take a weak wash, just put it all over. And then we won't worry about the seeds or anything at the moment. And then we just take a little bit of a darker wash, and we will just do a little bit of wetting wet. Okay, just to get that feeling again, that watercolor feeling. So this is how we'll darken up areas of the strawberry. So it's entirely up to you which way, which green you want. So I'm just going to use this darker green because I can see that you've got that sort of darker green there. I'm going to go in. Have you all got a piece of paper as well? I've got a little scrap piece of paper where I'm just testing my colours. So just make sure you've got that to hand if you have. So again, just going in on it with a light wash. And then you can take your green, make that a little bit more intense, and then just start sort of taking that from the base up. I mean, if you wanted to intensify that a little bit more, you could always mix a little bit of I've got some cadmium yellow here as well. So you could always mix a little bit of cad yellow with some of that viridian, and that gives a really nice sort of leafy green, as you can see there. So you could even pop some of that in if you wanted to, just to give that variation. You know, you can be quite free with this, so you can, you don't have to do what I do. Just experiment, because this is quite a nice exercise for experimenting, that's for sure. And then I think I will just plop a little bit of that in the middle. A little bit of burnt sienna, burnt umber. So that will spread nicely out there. Okay. So that's quite a nice leaf, I would like to think. So obviously the same with this leaf as well, but then we've got this leaf here. So this is a little bit more complicated because we've got the foreshortening to start, and we've got the underside as well. That'll make a big mess. So I want to go in with a thin wash again of the viridian. And I can do that. Just to the top sides of the leaves here. And then going with my darker colour. It depends where the light's sort of shining, really. So I want that definitive line. So I don't really want to do wet in wet with the colour that I've already put down. So I want that sort of differentiation onto dry paper, and then obviously just you can use that green then just to create that sort of central area, and then add some more of this. Add a little bit more of that colour. It gives it a little bit more of a natural tint. As you can see, the thing is with watercolour, what I find with watercolour a lot is when I do something, I think, oh my goodness, what on earth does that look like? That looks terrible. But when it dries, it brings it into a completely different vein. That's the sort of, I don't know, love-hate relationship that I seem to have with the medium. So that's that really. So I'm just going to stop recording now and just see how everybody's getting on. Okay, so what I've done here, I've just drawn a couple of outlines of strawberries. You don't have to draw them. You don't have to, you could draw them just with your paintbrush. And I've just got them at an angle because we're just going to try a few sort of repetitions of this because it can be a little bit difficult. Now I've drawn some leaves on some, not on others, because sometimes I'd like the brush to create the leaf, and so on and so forth. But what we're looking at here is creating the seeds, and that's possibly more difficult than it looks. So I'm going to take a slightly different brush to the one I was using before, because I was using like a sort of pointed round brush, but I'm just going to use a normal round brush. I think we've all got a normal round brush in the repertoire, and mixing up that colour again. So I want to mix up that cad red with the alizarin to get the strawberry look. So there's two ways we can do this. I'm going to show you one way first, and then show you another way, which is possibly a little more, a little safer, I suppose, might be the word. I don't know what it is. So in order to do this, it goes through a really ugly stage. So what I would do at first, I would just create the sort of outline here, because that will naturally be darker because it's obviously on the underside. And what we want to do, we want to create just some circles, and it looks really quite ugly. So as light as we possibly can. Like I say, I'm quite heavy-handed, so this sort of thing really is quite difficult for me. But we won't need it up there either, so we can get rid of that. I'll just leave a little area here for the highlight. And then in there, we just put a couple of marks like so. So it does look a bit weird. It doesn't look the nicest, the juiciest strawberry. But what we can do with this as well, we can go back in and we can darken this up, depending on what the strawberry looks like. I don't actually have a strawberry in front of me, but this is how I found that I do strawberries. So if you think that they look a little bit sort of too gappy, you can go back in and you can gently just take those down a little bit. It's entirely up to you. So while it's still wet, you can even add a different colour. So I'd add a little bit more alizarin, and with a little bit of a complementary colour. What's the complementary colour? It's green, isn't it? So that's quite handy because we'll be using green. I use a sap green, I think, on this one. Oh, that's too bright. And mix a little bit of that with the red. Gets a nice colour up, and then you could even just dot that in very, very lightly at the bottom here, just to give it that little colour. And you could even pull that out if you wanted to create a shadow. So that's quite a loose way of doing this, which I quite like, if I'm honest. And a couple up here, and then we can use that green as well to, which green was it? This one here. At the top here, rather than creating these leaves, what I would do is I would go in with my brush, and then I just let the brush do what it needs to do. So a dip down and then lightly up, and you get quite a nice variation of leaves. And that's just bleeding into the top there as well. So because obviously naturally would be a shadow underneath that strawberry, underneath that the leaf. And again, if you want to make that a little bit darker, go in a little bit of wet and wet. If you want that darker by there or underneath, then that should be fine. So what I would normally do now is wait for that to wait for that to dry off a little bit, and then I can go in and then drop those seeds in a little bit darker. If you wanted a completely sort of what's the word, free watercolour look, you could go in and dab in a little bit of burnt sienna or a little bit of a mix of the red with the green as well, just to emphasize those seeds as well. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, and this is all up to you, this is entirely up to you what you want to do with it when you do the big strawberry. That's entirely up to you. This isn't easy, by the way. I just want to tell you that it's not easy for me. So when I was writing the lesson plan, I know that seasons do that, but they don't obviously do this bit here. I was thinking, what can I do to make this a little bit easier, because I find it a bit difficult. This is why I came up with these various ways, because I don't think there's sort of a panacea as such. So I've got quite a weak solution again. So this is a little bit more, a little bit less sort of bold. So same principle. Obviously, it's a bit too pink. That's better. So going in again, just with it a little bit lighter, and just doing the circles again. But then we're going to work wet in wet, so we sort of have to be reasonably fast with this, I think. And then what we can do with this now is go in with a darker colour or a more condensed colour, and we can drop that in, and that can create, can you see that flowing around all the wet areas? Excuse me. So it gives quite a natural wet in wet appeal. I quite like this method myself, but you just got to work quick. It's the only thing. And then if you think that some things look a little bit like, they look a little bit like chainmail, I think, but you can go over that again afterwards. Again, I will do the let the paintbrush define the leaves. I'll just drop in there a little bit. There's got a bit too much there, I think. And then for the base, I think I'll use a little bit of blue and red to create a purple. It's generally what shadows of swords are made of. But again, that's entirely up to you. So as you can see, what I'm doing for the shadow, I'm just using sort of the flat of my brush. So I get quite a sort of dry brush effect as well. So I quite like that look for a shadow. And then make it a little bit darker just around where the strawberry actually lies. And you can take that into the strawberry as well. So if the strawberry is, you know, that strawberry feels quite dry now. So what I'm going to do there is just take a little bit of burnt umber. With a very fine brush. I don't know what the finest you've got, or you can be very, very careful and use a big brush. And I'm just going to just mark those into some of these marks here. And can you see that sort of brings it alive a little bit, makes it look a bit more strawberry-esque. It's such a word. And for me, I feel on that one, I need a little bit more. I'd like to darken that area up here a little bit, so it's going to take a little bit. Okay, so if that one's dry too, you can go back and do the same thing. Again, if you want to darken it up, you can darken it up a little bit more with some sienna and some red, if that's what you want. And then, oh, that's still a little bit wet actually, so I didn't notice. But and if you wanted to, you could also use, if you wanted to be a little bit more bold, rather than waiting for it to dry, you can actually dot this in slightly in wet and wet as well, because that turns out quite nice too. It spreads a little bit. Obviously, the stronger the pigment, the less it's going to spread around. So this one's quite a wet and wet, very expressive look. I think the last one I'm going to show you is a more photorealistic look. Now, obviously, I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you did too much photorealism for the larger strawberry. It's quite time consuming, as you'll see now. Same principle, but it's it is quite laboured. There's a lot of drying time involved. So just like I say, the same principle, but a far more careful approach. So you may want to use a smaller brush for this. Because you're looking to make so you're looking at each one of these cells individually. And I'm, like I said, I'm not the most careful of people or the most patient of people, if I'm honest. But I do like photorealism though, so I don't really know why I don't really get on very well with this, but as you can see, it takes quite some time. For this, I'm going to mix some cad yellow, some of the green. And then just a little bit of a darker, I still use a little bit of wetting wet on here. As you can see, I'm not actually painting the underside just yet. And then we just build it up from there, as you can imagine, with a darker glaze and a deeper glaze and a deeper glaze and a deeper glaze and so on and so forth. These are basically to practice on, so just the various techniques and see how you get on. If you wanted to put a bit of masking fluid on there for the seeds, then feel free to do that. In order to do that, if you do have the masking fluid, obviously if you don't, no worries. Just grab one of my brushes. And just one thing about masking fluid is just make sure that you wash the brush straight away, ideally in a soapy solution. So I've got here, I've just got some soap and water in a jar, just to make sure that I get all that off. Okay, so yeah, you can do this. Which one was I doing? Unfortunately, you can't see this because my masking fluid is white, but you do have some blue, which is a bit of a pain that it's white, if I'm honest. But what I'm doing, I'm just creating those marks. Because the thing is, I think with watercolour, obviously you have to leave them out. So you have to leave these out. It's a lot easier to paint them in, if I'm honest. But then it's really effective when it comes to painting a larger area here. I'm not entirely sure where everything is. Okay. So going back to the photorealistic version, just take a slightly bigger brush, not much bigger. This is only 4. I'm not sure exactly which brushes you have there, and I'm just going to build up the glaze. So just going to add another colour. Like I said, this takes a while, so I don't want to labour it too much. And as you can see, let's make it slightly darker. And I don't have to be quite so precise because obviously I've already been around and established those whiter spaces. So you know, I don't have to draw those as such, you know. So it's a little bit easier once you've got something to work with. Once there's some information down on the page. And you can just put this where you see fit as well, so it doesn't have to go over everything. Obviously the darker areas is what you're looking for here. And you can see how that eventually would begin to take the form of that strawberry. Obviously there's a little bit more to do, so we need to drop a little bit of burnt sienna in there, or burnt umber, sorry, or sienna, doesn't really matter. And we can make those seeds a little bit more realistic. But it's patience. That's all it is patience. Lots and lots of patience. So really, that's they're the sort of techniques that I'm looking at. My masking fluid, I need that to dry, but I don't think it's quite dry. But obviously, you can be far more liberal when you have masking fluid on there. So I am going to I'm just going to paint straight over that masking fluid and hope for the best. And if you've got the masking fluid, then you can use all the different tips and techniques as well, you know, with the wet in wet, and or you can do it photorealistic. It's entirely up to you. So masking fluid is quite a godsend, if I'm honest. So once with the masking fluid, once you're happy with the shading of the strawberry, then feel free to take the masking fluid off, obviously once it's dry. I'm just dropping in a little bit of green by there, just to knock that back a little bit. I want that to spread around, so give it a little bit more water to follow. So all I'm doing here is alternating between the green and the red, just to create that depth, to make that this image look a little bit more three-dimensional. But I definitely need some more up here because this is quite dark where it meets the leaf. But this time I don't want it to run into the leaf so much. It's sort of semi, not necessarily even abstract, semi-free, I suppose, semi-loose. And here, I think we'll have to be a bit darker. I mean, it's a lot easier if you've got an image in front of you, or a strawberry would be even better, actually. It's not always easy when you're just sort of doing it hypothetically. But just for an example, then I think once we get the leaves on there, that won't look quite so dark. And obviously watercolour dries a lot lighter. This one here is not quite finished, but I'm going to just demonstrate again with the seeds as such. I will, now this is really quite laboursome, is I want to go around the seeds, where the seeds go. Can you see that? So what I'm doing, I'm circling all these open segments, and that's creating some shadow for me. Like I say, if photorealism is your thing, then a strawberry is an absolute cracking item to practice on, because it is quite intricate. And you just keep going around and around in the same vein. Leave a little bit of the white in places on the outside of where you're actually outlining, because you want those to behave as highlights too, because when there's an indentation or anything, obviously you've got a combination of light and dark, and that's the only way that we can make that three-dimensional as such. Okay, you don't really want to watch me doing this, I don't think. So that's basically the that's basically how you would create the photorealism. Obviously, look to the leaves as well, and find the dark and the light in the leaves. But like I said, without a reference image, I'm just making all this up. It's not always the easiest thing to do. Also, I wouldn't mind, and just a touch. Oh, I let that dry. And what I would do to make this photorealistic as well, once that's dried, I would then wet this strawberry again, just around, obviously around the white areas, and I would just drop a little bit of a darker colour on there and just keep building that up. So I'm still working wet in wet, even though my layer's dry, because once it's dry, then I can like I said, I can wet it again, and the water and the paint will behave again, wet in wet, and that's that. So I'm going to pause the recording here again and just see how everyone's getting on in class. Okay, so what I've done, I've just drawn this large strawberry, and what I need to do here is create quite an intense drawing, I suppose, because I want to work out where the highlights are going to be, and obviously where all the seeds are going to be. So I'm just going to do that lightly. So this is what we're going to have to do, but I'm not going to do the whole thing, because otherwise I don't want to stop you all. I mean, I'll do the whole thing, but I'm not going to do it at this moment in time. I'll do it while we're while everybody else is doing it. So I'm just drawing on the seeds as I can see them on this image. And also what I need to do is work out where my highlights are going to be as well. So I'm just going to draw those in too. So I can be a little bit less random with the masking fluid. Now the beauty with masking fluid is I'm using a 4B. You won't use a 4B. But this is just so that you can see what I'm doing, is the masking fluid does have a nice habit of picking up the pencil as well, I find, sometimes. So, oh, yes, sorry?
You were frozen for a bit then, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hopefully that won't interfere with the recording. Did I freeze for everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'll just go back through that now. So I'm using the 4B. I would suggest that you didn't use a 4B. I'm just doing that so that you can see, and I'm just putting in some of the seeds, and I'm drawing in the highlights. The beauty with masking fluid, it can actually pick up pencil quite well as well. So if you do have these pencil marks, then it's not drastic. So that's all I'm doing here. So all I'm going to do here is there's a big part here. So I'm just working out where my fluid's going to go. And here on the image, there is a considerable area to mask. And I'm just going to put that seed there. So for those of you without masking fluid, the same principle applies, okay? So just because you don't have the fluid, then you just have to be far more careful on that first wash. I'm just going to put another couple of seeds in here, and I think there's a little bit of light goes on over here as well. So with my fluid, I'm just going to paint in reasonably thickly, as we said, as Jane was saying, that it does need to be reasonably thick as well, because otherwise it's very, very difficult to get it off. And I'm just painting around those highlights there. So it's quite handy to, it's really, if you do the preparation, for example, in terms of working out where this masking fluid is going to go. I think this is a little bit, is this coloured? No, it's slightly
No.
it's got like a yellowy tint. So I don't know if you can see that at all, but I'll hold it up. Not, you can see where I'm going, I hope, with it. Because we'll take this off, we'll take the masking fluid off before we finish the painting. Normally you'd leave it on. If you're doing a painting, you'd normally leave the masking fluid on more often than not until the very end, the big reveal. But we won't for this. It's just to restrict the wash. Okay. Gosh, I didn't think I was going to have enough material for today. And it's 12 o'clock and we're doing the final piece. So I hope that's okay with everyone.
Quite intensive, isn't it?
Sorry?
It is quite an intensive piece.
It is, yeah. You don't realise. You think when I first saw this, I didn't even start looking at it until yesterday. Again, it's just a strawberry. It can't be too. But then you think, then there's a lot of intricacies with it. With regards to the seeds as well, I'm just going to drop a little bit of masking fluid onto the seeds, because there's also a small highlight there too. So that's where I'm going to stop. Obviously, if you don't have, I'm going to draw a couple more down here for those of you who don't have the masking fluid. And then we'll just be very, very careful as not to to go overboard with this. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry now. So I don't know, are we good for a break? Or, I mean, I'm okay. I don't mind sitting here, but I'm just going to let that dry. So I'm going to pause the recording again until it's dry. Okay, so this is almost dried, but like, you know, we know what the mix is. We know that it's the Cad Red and the alizarin crimson. So what I'm going to do is just a light wash again over this, but obviously I've got masking fluid on here, so that helps. But for those bits that I don't have masking fluid, and obviously the pips as well, I can take a little bit of red into there. But if you don't have masking fluid, then just be very, very careful. Don't create any channels within those marks. Otherwise the water will gladly flow into it. You know, you can go over as well. You can go over the, go inside the, where we've masked off as well. So just around that pip. I'm only going to do half of this, obviously, because we don't have that much time. So you can either, as well with this, you can work wet in wet. So we can get this on here and work quickly, wet in wet, if you want to. And you can put the darker colour, you can make a more pigmented colour to drop in. It's entirely up to you how you want to work on this one, since we've got all the techniques. And if you want to use wet in wet for the stronger areas, then do so. But just always make sure if you're using wet and wet that the second colour is more pigmented than the first. Otherwise you get the bloom. So like I say, I'm only going to do a little bit of the, not the whole strawberry itself, because that would take a bigger brush and obviously more time. So I'm just going to let that dry a little bit now. What I could do though is, whilst I'm waiting for that to dry, as long as I'm quite careful with a smallish brush or a very careful bigger brush, is I can put a little bit of ochre for the seeds. So just dropping a little touch of ochre, a nice sharp point on my brush. So give it a turn when you're picking up the paint, and just drop a little bit of ochre in there. Just try making sure that you've still got that reservoir between the the other paint as well. So just make sure that it doesn't bleed. As long as you've got that little reservoir, you're sort of quite safe, really. So I'm literally waiting for paint to dry. So I'll just pause the video while that's dry. Once that's dry, and I don't think mine is completely dry, I'm just going to take a little bit of burnt umber. I've got some there, haven't I? And we do the same as what we did beforehand. So we're just going to circle the seed with a nice thin brush. And some are in more shadow than others as well, so you can be a little bit more bold with the shadow of the seed.
Had a very nice day out there. It's
I'm just going in just on that wet, and I'm just going in with a little bit of a richer colour, so it doesn't look quite so rigid. And some you can sort of you can cover up and leave a small area, just make it a bit more realistic rather than it being regimented. So again, we just wait for that to dry, because what we're going to do next is remove that masking fluid. Oh, actually, I think if the top's dry here as well, we can again do the leaves. I'm just going to mix a bit of that sap green with some yellow ochre just to make that nice, that sort of greeny colour there. And
This is all coming off this.
so I'm just again using a little bit of wet and wet here, just to make that where it connects to the strawberry a little bit darker. So now that it's semi-dry, I don't think it's completely dry, but I'm willing to take the risk for the risk of running on until about 5 o'clock this evening. So if we remove the fluid, remove the masking fluid, obviously be careful if your leaves are wet like mine. Wasn't quite dry, but that's okay. I'm not too upset. And now we can work a little bit more. So if we want to put another glaze in there, we can do. I think that might be a good idea. So it's nice and dry now. And what we can do as well is not make these masked areas just too dominant. We can start playing with those as well. So rather than them being quite so prominent. So if you didn't have any masking fluid, obviously this isn't an issue. You don't want them, you know, stark, staringly obvious, because it's a bit difficult when you put masking fluid. That you know, the stuff's really thick anyway, so it's quite difficult to get it to get it in a thin layer. You can get, which I have ordered actually, a what's it called? You can get a precision masking fluid applicator. So it's masking fluid with like a very fine point to it. So I'm looking forward to that arriving, so I can give that a go. With this area here, I want to get inside there because I don't really want that to be one big white space. Make that a little bit more random. Ignore that big blob there. That was because my paint wasn't quite dry when I took the masking fluid off. And I'm using quite a large brush here. I don't know why, but it's got quite a good tip on it, so I'm not too worried about that. And the beauty is, because this is the third glaze on the main body of the strawberry, but it's the first glaze, obviously, on the masked out areas. So you are getting quite a nice gradation of the light. Obviously, if you don't have masking fluid, when you do draw in the highlights, just be very, very light with it, because obviously you can see mine. Obviously, I'm using 4B, but the masking fluid has brought off quite a lot of the 4B pencil that I'd applied earlier. And be quite bold with your strokes as well. Don't you know, just, because when you're working wet in wet on something this scale as well, you need to be quite bold. Otherwise it dries too quickly. And also, like Roy was saying, if there are areas, you can grab yourself a dry brush or a piece of paper, a piece of tissue paper, and you can lift out highlights if you find that you need to. So you can sort of take that layer off as well. Okay, so I'm not going to go any further with this. I don't think. There are a few things I could do with it, but but as it stands, obviously I'm not completing the whole thing. I want some highlights here. Don't want them quite so bold, so I am just going to just touch them up a little bit. Don't want them completely white. And also, just one other thing, I think I would like to just take some of these highlights down a little bit and make some of these seeds just slightly darker. And again, I'm just using my large brush, but I can because it's, like I say, it's got a really good point. If you want to use a smaller brush, it's fine. Okay, so like I say, I'm not going to finish this. This is entirely up to you. You can use whichever technique. This is just the technique that Seasons have given us. I generally would have used maybe a little bit more of a expressive technique to do this, but that's entirely up to you. Like I say, I delivered the techniques that perhaps that you could use beforehand. So, yeah. So for the benefit of the recording, thanks for watching, and hopefully I will see you soon.